Daniel 11 portrays a long-running antagonism between a king of the north and a king of the south. Many Bible students have assumed that these are the only two warring factions spoken of in the chapter. Careful study of the entire chapter, however, reveals a third party, a willful king. And the king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished, for that is determined shall be done. Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall magnify himself above all. But in his estate shall he honour the God of forces, and a god whom his fathers knew not shall he honour, with gold and silver, and with precious stones and pleasant things. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with a strange god, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at the willful king described in the preceding verses, and the king of the north shall come against him, the willful king, like a whirlwind, with chariots, and with horsemen, and with many ships. And he, the king of the north, shall enter into the countries, and shall overflow and pass over. The identifying hallmarks listed by Daniel reveal the willful king to be revolutionary France before and during the role of Napoleon Bonaparte. And the king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished, for that is determined shall be done. 3 times in Daniel 11 is the phrase used to do according to his will. The first is found in verse 3 and refers to Alexander the Great. The second time is in verse 16 and refers to Julius Caesar. Both Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar were conquering political powers. Therefore, when the willful king also acts according to his will, he must be a conquering power as well. France was. France killed its king and demolished its monarchy. The new government, the French Republic, did indeed exalt and magnify itself above every god. For the first time, atheism became a dominant influence among all classes. Scholars trace this directly to the social and religious upheaval following the French Revolution. The French Revolution, 1789–94, would dramatically transform the power relationship between belief and unbelief in Europe. Whereas before atheism had been highbrow, discussed in the cafes and salons of Paris, henceforth it would set itself down among the people. A strident unbelief became a real political factor in public life. As the anti-clerical de-Christianization period following the Revolution would demonstrate. The impact of the French Revolution in inspiring people to put the irreligious ideas of the Enlightenment into practice would extend beyond France to other European countries and to the American colonies. The far-reaching effects of atheism in the world today can be traced back to when France, the willful king, exalted himself and magnified himself above every god, speaking against Yahuwah by denying his existence. Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall magnify himself above all. At the beginning of the French Revolution in 1789, Roman Catholicism was the state religion. The willful king, however, showed no regard for the God of his fathers. In October 1793, public worship was forbidden, and over the next few months all visible signs of Christianity were removed. On 23 November 1793, churches were closed, to be converted into warehouses, manufacturing works, or even stables. Streets and other public places bearing the names of saints were given new, often Republican-themed names, and time itself was recast to further repudiate France's Christian past. The Catholic Church has always declared that the sign of her authority is the act of changing the day of worship from Sabbath to Sunday. The Willful King was aware of this and went so far as to create an entirely new calendar to distance itself from Christianity. The new calendar had 10-day weeks, so Sunday did not even exist in it. Pierre-Sylvain Maréchal, the first one to suggest a change of calendar, declared, "The calendar of the French Republic must not resemble in any respect the official annuals of the Apostolic and Roman Church." France's complete rejection of its Christian heritage proves that it was indeed the Willful King that regarded not the God of his fathers. France stands apart in the world's history as the single state which, by the decree of her legislative assembly, pronounced that there was no God, and of which the entire population of the capital and a vast majority elsewhere, women as well as men, danced and sang with joy in accepting the announcement. France's rejection of Christianity led to another act that also identifies it as the Willful King who regarded not the desire of women. Revolutionary France became known for its licentiousness. For the first time in a Christian nation, homosexuality was made legal. It is perhaps not surprising then that this liberal democratic revolution also initiated the disestablishment of sexual orthodoxy, permitting greater individual freedom, and extracting the state from the regulation of homosexuality. With the advent of the Napoleonic legal code, sodomy disappeared from criminal law, and as Napoleon swept through Europe evicting the mainstays of the old order, he left new nation builders in his wake who founded legal systems without the category of sodomy. France truly regarded not the desire of women. But in his estate shall he honour the God of forces, and a God whom his fathers knew not shall he honour, with gold and silver and with precious stones and pleasant things. Napoleon's name has come down through history synonymous with that of Alexander the Great, Hitler, and other power-hungry conquerors. In fact, his very name has been used to designate the military conflicts in which he embroiled France. The Napoleonic Wars were a series of conflicts fought between France under the leadership of Napoleon Bonaparte and a number of European nations between 1799 and 1815. When the French rejected Yahuwah, they exalted instead the goddess of reason. The Cathedral of Notre Dame itself was renamed the Temple to the Goddess Reason. The French Revolution virtually bankrupted France. Following the French Revolution, the government nationalized the Louvre, an old palace. The National Assembly decreed that the Louvre should be used as a museum to display the nation's masterpieces. It was at the Louvre that France collected gold, silver, precious stones, and pleasant things. To the French, this was a demonstration of the superiority of reason over religion. One of the primary contributing factors of the French Revolution was resentment of the Roman Catholic Church and its wealth. As the revolutionaries gained power, they nationalized all church property. On 2nd November 1789, France's new National Assembly, known as the Constituent Assembly, passed a decree that placed all church property at the disposition of the nation. Talleyrand, the Bishop of Autun, and one of the few clerics to support the measure, argued that all church property rightfully belonged to the nation, and that its return, by helping to bring about a better society, should therefore be viewed as a religious act. The museum and the principles of atheistic France had a symbiotic relationship, each benefiting the other. The wealth of the nation's former oppressors, now on display before the public, who collectively owned it, supported France's arrogant belief in her superiority under the reign of reason. The treasures on display were a giant propaganda campaign to convince the populace that reason was superior to the Christian God. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. The word thus means in the way just indicated, so this verse summarizes the deeds of the Willful King. But then it goes on to add one more identifying characteristic. The willful king shall divide the land for gain. The French Revolution had a devastating impact on the economy. A number of measures were tried to stabilize the economy with varying degrees of success. France divided the land for gain when she sold land confiscated from the Catholic Church and nobles who had fled the country. In this, as in every other particular of the prophecy, France is proven to be the willful king. And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at the willful king, and the king of the north shall come against him, the willful king, like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships. And he, the king of the north, shall enter into the countries, and shall overflow and pass over. Verse 40 reveals both the king of the north and the king of the south ganging up on a third player, the willful king described in the preceding verses. This confirms the identity of France as the willful king. The king of the south, Egypt, pushed at France when the ruling party disrupted Egypt's trade with France. One of the triggers of the French invasion was the virtual destruction of French trade with Egypt by the 1790s. France's use of force to respond to Egypt's pushing had very far-reaching, unintended consequences. France had traditionally been allied with the Ottoman Empire, and at least for the moment there was no intention of disrupting this. The French plan relied heavily on the Ottomans staying at least neutral, counting on their hostility to the Mamluks in Egypt, overweighing their anger at the French invasion of what was still officially an Ottoman province. This military action by the willful king, France, in turn, led to the king of the north, the Ottoman Empire, entering into the countries just as Daniel had foretold over 2,000 years before. Ultimately, in a complicated chain of events, the willful king's invasion of Egypt and the king of the north's explosive response were also responsible in part for the tensions that culminated in the Armenian genocide, the Greek genocide, and the Assyrian genocide, in which up to 3 million Christians lost their lives. France fits every particular given in prophecy to identify the willful king. Divine foresight gave the information to Daniel to record and preserve it for the final generation. This prophecy reveals that the close of probation is very, very soon, possibly just months away.